All right, let's jump straight into one of the biggest paradoxes in computer science. How on earth do you build a secure system out of inherently flawed, buggy software? It sounds completely impossible, right? We all know software has bugs. It's just a reality of writing code. But when that code is responsible for securing the actual backbone of the internet, we can't exactly throw our hands up and accept defeat. We have to design systems that expect failure from the get-go. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're dissecting how the legendary OpenSSH case study completely revolutionized security. We're going to explore how system designers shifted their focus from the impossible dream of writing perfect code to designing incredibly clever architectures that actually tolerate inevitable software bugs without compromising the entire machine. Here is our roadmap for today. We've got 1. The monolithic security problem. 2. Principle of least privilege. 3. Privilege separation in OpenSSH. 4. The monitor and worker dance. And finally, 5. Measuring the security gains. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The monolithic security problem. Think back to the old days of Unix systems. User ID 0 means root, the superuser. If a process runs as root, it holds the keys to the entire kingdom. It can do absolutely anything on the system. Read any file, tweak any permission, take total, absolute control. Now, historically, an application like the OpenSSH server had to run entirely as root just to function. And honestly, that is a terrifying prospect. When a massive monolithic application runs as root, your attack surface is just huge. OpenSSH is written in C, which means you're dealing with potential buffer overflows, you've got logic errors, and worse, it relies on complex third-party libraries like zlib for compression or Kerberos for authentication. If a hacker finds a single bug in any of that code, because the whole thing is running as user ID 0, that tiny bug becomes a system-wide catastrophe. It's game over. Section 2. Principle of least privilege. To solve this vulnerability, designers needed a massive paradigm shift. Enter the principle of least privilege. The idea is so elegantly simple. Every single component in a system should only have the bare minimum privileges it needs to do its specific job, and nothing more. If a piece of code only needs to parse network packets, it shouldn't have the power to read your password file. By putting code into isolated boxes with only the bare minimum permissions, a compromised box severely limits the actual damage. Our source material sums this up perfectly. The focus is really going to be on how do you tolerate bugs, assuming that we're not going to succeed 100% of the time. We aren't trying to write perfect code here. We're assuming the attacker is going to find a bug. Our goal is just to make sure that when they do, they are completely trapped in a powerless box. Section 3. Privilege separation in OpenSSH. Let's look at how developers actually shattered the monolith to apply this. The old OpenSSH was one single process running entirely as root, huge attack surface. The new OpenSSH split into much smaller, distinct processes. They kept only the most essential code running as root and pushed everything else into isolated, unprivileged processes. It drastically contained the risk, and the best part is, they did all this while keeping the client experience perfectly transparent. Here's how that connection sequence actually plays out, and it's basically a masterclass in controlled delegation. Step 1, a root listener just sits there and accepts the TCP connection. Step 2, it immediately forks a new root monitor process for that specific connection. Step 3, that monitor forks an unprivileged worker process and hands the network connection down to it. So now, this powerless worker is the one actually talking to the potentially malicious client over the internet. And check out just how powerless this new worker is. Its root directory is set to a completely empty folder. Imagine a master bank robber blowing the vault door off, only to find themselves standing in an empty broom closet. There are literally 0 files accessible. Even if an attacker uses a buffer overflow to totally hijack this worker process, they look around, then there is nothing to steal. No keys, no passwords, just an empty void. Section 4. The monitor and worker dance. But that raises a big question. If the worker has 0 privileges, how does it do anything useful? Well, it does it through a highly controlled dance. The unprivileged worker has to ask the root monitor to perform sensitive tasks via a strict remote procedure call interface. It's a rigid request and response setup, neatly divided into pre-authentication and post-authentication operations. The worker can't read the password file, so it asks the monitor to do it, and the monitor just replies yes or no. Now, you might be wondering what happens if a compromised worker tries to trick the monitor. What stops a hacked worker from just handing the monitor an old, stolen cryptographic challenge response to log a hacker in?
The designers thought of that. The monitor generates and tracks the random cryptographic challenge itself, forcing the worker to prove fresh authenticity. This brilliantly shows that the API isn't just a basic communication channel, it is an ironclad security boundary. The monitor trusts absolutely no one, especially not its own worker process.
Section 5. Measuring the security gains. Let's step back and look at the actual numbers here because the impact is staggering. By isolating the heaviest, most complex code into unprivileged boxes, roughly 2/3 of the OpenSSH codebase, including those risky third-party libraries like Ziblib, now runs completely without root access. So if a bug fires in Ziblib today, it fires inside that empty, powerless box. But, of course, there's always a catch. Securely passing state between these isolated boxes was an absolute nightmare for developers. Transferring an active zlib compression state from a pre-auth worker to a post-auth worker meant developers had to engineer this mind-bending workaround. They basically had to hack how the library requested memory, using a highly complex shared memory malloc trick just to keep compression working seamlessly. It was brilliant, but so complicated. And you know what they say? Complexity is the enemy of security. Eventually, modern OpenSSH just dropped that complex memory trick entirely. The new rule became absolutely no network compression is allowed before authentication. That minor protocol change resulted in massive code simplification. It proves a vital lesson. Sometimes changing the rules of the game is infinitely better than building a fragile workaround. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a fascinating thought. We've seen how OpenSSH fractured a monolithic application into distrusting, isolated pieces to neutralize bugs. Web browsers do this today with tabs. So, looking around at the software we use every single day, what other monolithic structures in our digital lives are just waiting to be broken apart? Where else do we desperately need the least privileged treatment? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.